Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on the Not Fox News Network. Today being Tuesday, June 6th, 2017. Of course, June 6th, the invasion of Normandy back there in World War II, to honor our veterans, if they still teach this sort of thing in schools. But be that as it may, again, the website boxofsunglasses.com, that's one word. Twitter at Rob Roselli. Email info@boxofsunglasses.com. And of course, Facebook, Rob Roselli 1. Okay, and tonight we're going to discuss the Rockefeller Empire, okay, and its contribution, really almost sole contribution. I mean, they're pretty much the nexus of what is the June 2017 vassal slave state that is America, this debt-ridden welfare third world country that isn't my country, this deterioration, this rot that is the United States of America, as exemplified by places like Detroit, okay, with an illiteracy rate I think of 50% or something like that. GM, Ford, the Chrysler, the decadence, the decay, okay. How this all happened and what was the greatest nation in the history of the world. And I'm going to sit here and tonight and document that a lot of it lays at the feet of the so-called Rockefeller Empire. And as some may not have heard because it didn't get a lot of press, is that the heir, okay, to the Rockefeller Empire, David Rockefeller, croaked about a month ago, I think in April. Okay, so he's heading to the bottomless pit. Okay, he's got his appointment set up with an eternity in Hades. Okay, well deserved, as we will document here tonight on the Not Fox News Network. But don't forget, again, on boxofsunglasses.com, you can read all about David Rockefeller's boss right here. Okay, pleased to meet you. Okay, available on Amazon. A fictional conversation that cites real historical and biblical events is basically the premise of that book. And you can just plug in David Rockefeller and one of his henchmen for the main character in that book. Well, I guess not the main character, but the second character. The main character is Satan or Lucifer himself, but be it as it may. The other book, The Un-American Genocidal Complex, remember the Georgia Guidestones, the Anti-Ten Commandments of the Radical Environmental Movement, the genocidal radical environmental movement that wants to cut the world's population by 90%. Okay, all brought to us by the Skull and Bones crowd, the Eastern Establishment, the American Illuminati, the Deep State, whatever it's called now, what I call the Un-American Genocidal Complex, and of course a lot of it all being facilitated through this building right here, the United Nations, of course the Un part of the Un-American Genocidal Complex, again available on boxofsunglasses.com. And the first book available as a PDF, They Live, Great Society of the Undead, of course with the all-seeing eye of Apollo, or Apollyon, okay, the king of the bottomless pit where David Rockefeller is going to be spending pretty much eternity, okay, in darkness, and we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, there's the king of the bottomless pit above the capless pyramid of Giza on the back of your Federal Reserve note. That's really essentially worthless at this point, as the world is finding out, as the so-called Harvard, Chicago University, Keynesian, Paul Krugman, New York Times douchebags, losers that actually bought the Rockefeller scam known as the Federal Reserve, hook, line, and sinker, continuing to sink us into moral and economic oblivion through something called quantitative easing, which is a fancy name for German Weimar Republic money printing, or a couple of 5-year-olds sitting around a Monopoly game and passing out money from the bank. It's exactly the same concept. But anyway, that's all run by Apollyon right here. Okay, and that is your Federal Reserve note. And of course the J.P. Morgan financed Cathedral of St. John's, the Divine Cathedral right here at Mystery Babylon in New York City, USA, also populates the front cover of this book. Okay, J.P. Morgan, of course, a close associate, a little bit below the Rockefeller Standard Oil Empire, as we'll get into tonight. And as we go on, we'll go through and document my rest in hell, David Rockefeller, is probably being too generous at this point, okay, with the destruction, with the powder keg that he has left in the United States and the world, the deaths, okay, the millions of deaths. We're talking about World War II, Vietnam, Korea, trading with the Communist Chinese, creating the Communist Chinese, Darwin, eugenics, the Nazis, Hitler, okay. It all can be traced to the Rockefeller Empire, and through them to the Rothschild family over in Europe, and right to Satan himself, or Robert Christian, okay, the builder of the Georgia Guidestones, okay, symbolic of the 18th degree of the Freemasons, or the Rosy Cross, or the Rosicrucians, okay, just to go back in time, just to reiterate this a little bit, just to show how in your face the conspiracy really is. There's the Invisible College, okay, predecessor to the British Royal Society, the Rothschilds, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, the Skull and Bones, the Eastern Establishment, the Deep State, right? The modern sense, it all got its start right here, and I don't want to go back into the Knights Templar. We've done that, okay? And by the way, the archive shows are available, boxofsunglasses.com, and the YouTube channel links are right there. But anyway, you can read the titles. But anyway, just be that as it may, for tonight, this is what they're worshiping, okay? This is really symbolic of the same thing as the Great Pyramid we just saw, okay, more or less. Okay, you got little baby Lucifer flying around up here in the sky with the serpent around him, the all-seeing eye, okay, behind the clouds there, the sunburst, okay, is symbolized by this star here, okay. They got the hand of the great sky god Apollo, or Apollyon, leading the whole thing along, the rose plus the cross, the 18th or 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry, okay, or the Rosicrucians, okay. Revelation 13:8, count or calculate the number of the beast, 600, 6, or 18, okay. This is who our leaders have been following, okay. Robert Christian, or the Rosicrucians, okay, the Rosy Cross, and that's fully documented, okay, with literally well over 100 pages of documented history and discussion on the mysterious Robert Christian, who jumps in and out of history like a certain serpent or certain lion described in 1 Peter 5, chapter 8, walking about the earth and prowling about the earth. But anyway, again, boxofsunglasses.com. And then don't forget the 3 basic principles. We try to keep this show very simple. Okay, number 1, the Bible is infallible. Okay, it is the core of the co-conspiracy, and actually core of life itself. Take that or leave it. That's your choice. Okay, there's no negotiating, there's no middle ground, nor can there be. Okay, there's no silliness, there's no theological evolution or whatever the Pope, that scam artist, okay, the Pope sitting inside his walls of the Vatican and telling us here in the United States to open our borders, that Dagon obelisk, Egyptian obelisk worshipping, sun god worshipping scam known as the Pope can, anyway. But so I'm not talking about organized religion. I'm talking about the Bible in its purest sense. Number 2 is that Israel is not God's chosen people. Okay, that's just ridiculously bad theology. I don't know what else to say on that. We've discussed that on several shows in the past. That's all documented. Again, if you go to the archives, I don't know how, John chapter 8, I don't know how you get around, Jesus says you're the children of the devil, or you're the children of hell in Matthew 23. I don't know how you miss that or misinterpret that, but be that as it may, that's not the point of tonight's show. And then, of course, number 3, that segues right into the identity of Mystery Babylon, which, have no doubt, is these very United States. Okay, and a scenario painted in Revelation 17 and 18, line by line, per the link on my site, is the scenario that's unfolding. Okay, so in other words, it's not going to be some stupid, comic book antichrist running around Jerusalem and 2 witnesses throwing fireballs at people, and everybody's watching it on CNN, and 2 witnesses dying. None of that stupidity. It's not going to go down like that. Okay, it's going to go down like an economic collapse of biblical proportions, a fake peace treaty. Okay, and then an ambush, a nuclear, EMP, or biological, or some combination thereof, ambush of the United States from nations that hate us and hate the deep state, okay, and hate our scam politicians, just hate us. And I'm not totally justifying it, but if you look at it, I mean, what is this nation that formerly known as the United States, what do we export besides debt, the AIDS virus, okay, poison vaccines, GMO foods, wars, okay, we've been at wars for how many years of our history, okay, I don't mean to sound like some American-hating liberal, okay, and I'll get into that in a few minutes, because this nation, this Rockefeller empire, formerly known as the United States, is what I can't stand, okay, and this is what lives in the physical, let's just say this is what lives in the physical borders that was once the United States. So without any further ado, let's get right into it, okay. And the best place, what I've done here, if you go on the New Age page of my website, okay, if you go into chapter, I think it's chapter 11, your page through, there's a link on there called 1984, okay, and what I've done is I've gone in and just tabulated, okay, 11 basic characteristics, and there might be more, I'm not saying this is it, but of Orwell's 1984, and I've gone across, and I've said, these all trace back to the Rockefeller / Standard Oil / who knows Federal Reserve empire that they have their fingers in, okay, these evil bastards, and David Rockefeller, I could say with some satisfaction, like I said, we'll be spending an eternity with his god Satan and Kronos, or Apollyon, okay, just as he and his henchmen wished, okay, his henchmen that gave us World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the impending economic calamity, the powder keg, this powder keg of hatred that is the current United States, okay, this sexual so-called revolution, okay, it all traces back, okay, you just got to follow the steps up the pyramid, okay, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's just go. The Orwellian concept that I have, number one, okay, the abolition of God. All right, now what is the most apparent, most obvious vehicle for this abolition is the public school system, right? And where did the modern public school system, not the Christian-based one that existed prior to around the turn of the century, where did the modern, well, it came through, John Dewey, who was financed by the Rockefeller Foundation and related funding sources, okay, the so-called father of modern American education. But all they did, they took thinking out of American education and they replaced it with regurgitation. So in other words, there's no questioning, okay? You go to a so-called free public school, okay, there's no questioning evolution, okay? They're the scumbag, pedophile-defending losers that the communists founded, not saying that to be funny, the communist founded American Civil Liberties Union will come and sue you back to the Stone Age, no pun intended. And of course you're forced into these free public schools at gunpoint, because if you don't pay your real estate taxes, they come in with gunpoint and take your property away. So you don't really have it's not really free, and they don't really have a choice, do you? As is the case with tolerant liberals, they force their thought process on you under the guise of freedom, but really under the guise of a gun or an IRS wage garnishment, and then call you intolerant when you get there if you disagree with them. Those stupid assholes. But anyway, excuse my French, but that's the public school system. And really what's behind the public school system is the Rockefeller founded General Education Board, okay, a so-called philanthropy. And you'll find in a lot of the Rockefeller-controlled press that David Rockefeller and they're called philanthropists, okay, these Viet Cong communist Chinese supplying pieces of crap the Rockefeller empire during the Vietnam War, okay, and the press that they own by our whore media are called philanthropists. All right. So when they fund things like the General Education Board and the Rockefeller Foundation and all these stupid assholes at Harvard, okay, then they're known as philanthropists. okay? But we all know better than that. We're a little, not super intelligent, but we're a little bit smarter than your average Harvard graduate who buys into all this crap. But anyway, so there's your number one, okay? It comes through the education system, courtesy of Rockefeller henchman John Dewey, the Huxley brothers, and the General Education Board, and of course the Rockefeller Foundation. Okay, the destruction of the family. Okay, now massive government welfare, and this almost ties in 2 and 3 almost tie together. Okay, no distinction between the sexes, and no marriage. Okay, in Orwell's 1984. Okay, people don't really catch on to this too much that I can see, but the lack of distinction between male and female, okay, and the destruction of marriage was huge. And of course, kids turning on their parents and all this sort of thing, that are polluting the planet with this Rockefeller founded crap called the global warming or the climate change movement, okay, coming through the Rockefeller founded United Nations. All right, but anyway, 2 and 3 are kind of, where do they really trace back to? But this sicko, this pedophile sicko known as Dr. Alfred Kinsey. Okay, now he was out in Indiana. Okay, and he did a lot of quote, research on sexuality and all this kind of thing. And it turned out a lot of his research was done on infants. Okay, and this is documented in a book called Sexual Sabotage, and you can just Google that or Amazon it if you're interested in reading it. But as usual, the Rockefeller name isn't far to be found behind the seed money for Dr. Alfred Kinsey to get his whole thing going. Okay, now if you look behind this freak show, okay, that passes as sexuality of today, it all traces back to Dr. Alfred Kinsey 60, 70 years ago, okay, who in turn got his funding and got off the ground with a lot of help from the Rockefeller Foundation. All right, so we're not even past step number 3. Okay, and you already see where this is going. Okay, this is a plan. Okay, this is a plan. All right, this isn't an accident. Everything we're discussing, even the Federal Reserve System. Okay, the Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Rothschild founded Federal Reserve System. It's a plan. Okay, you send it out through the Rockefeller founded University of Chicago. You fund it through the Rockefeller founded New York Times through douchebags like Paul Krugman, okay, and you massage it and you put it in a veneer of, economics and all this Harvard Business School and also that crap, but ultimately it's a scam. All right, I'm probably jumping ahead of myself, but anyway, so again, this so-called sexual revolution brought to us by a pedophile known as Alfred Kinsey, okay, and the sexual revolution, the gay rights movement, okay, and this whatever is happening today, okay, transgenderism, drag queens showing up at elementary schools, okay, it can all be traced back, okay, and all being defended by the communist-founded American Civil Liberties Union, and I'll keep saying that, okay. Their place in Hades is reserved, okay. The American Civil Liberties Union, so have no fear. Children ratting out their parents, okay, this was big in Orwell's 1984, and where do we see that? Okay, that's, we're getting to the point now where, kids are going to be sent home if mommy and daddy aren't conforming to, global warming, or they're, who knows, I mean, the way it's going right now, if mommy and daddy speak out against the drag queen at school at home, I mean, it's getting to the point where kids are going to go report mommy and daddy to the teacher at school, and mommy and daddy will be taken in for hate crimes, and it's getting to that point, okay. It's already illegal to have a Bible in school. Remember the separation of church and state scam. Okay. So the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, okay, the Declaration of Independence, which cites nature's God and divine providence, by the ACLU standard, would be found in violation of separation of church and state. So the founding document that was basically, the bedrock of the foundation for the Constitution, some 15 years later, is now unconstitutional. That's how ridiculous this is all getting, but it's not really, because that's what's happening, okay? But it's just the kids, and it all goes back, okay, to this hatred, okay, that's all being fermented by all this, okay? God's out of the picture, so now it's, white versus black, young versus old with the Social Security scam. Okay, citizen versus illegal immigrant, young versus old. Okay, this nation is a powder keg. Okay, thanks to these Rockefeller General Education Board funded stupid liberals that own the media, academia, and the so-called political class. Okay. Again, none of this is an accident, but let's move on. Historical revisionism. Okay, we just touched on that a little bit. Separation of church and state is a prime example of it's just blatant historical revisionism. Look, whether you agree or disagree with the Bible isn't really the issue. Okay, it's the issue is, did the founders, the majority of them, basically specify that the Bible be read and taught in the school system? And the answer is an emphatic yes. That they opened up the First Continental Congress with the 35th Psalm. Okay, George Washington proclaimed the day of Thanksgiving. Okay, Samuel Adams and John Hancock. Okay, Patrick Henry. Some of your lesser known founders were all not perfect. Okay, not perfect by any means, but devout Christians. Okay. And there I'll disagree with some of my fellow conspiracy kooks that say this nation was New Atlantis and, Francis Bacon. Yeah, and I get all that, and the Rosicrucians, and I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but I'm going to disagree and say the fundamental founding of this nation was a Christian nation. And the simple response is, the bottom line is, if we followed the formula, read the Bible and kept it as the core of our society and the bedrock of our society, as the founders had specified, we wouldn't be in a situation we're in. Okay, the separation of powers. Okay, so that's my response to those that say, well, the American founders were part of the Rosicrucians and this and Ben, and I get all that. Okay, but I don't buy that. Okay, but again, the toxic, these termites eating away at this nation's founding, God, the public school system as it was initially designed, the family, just to review. A lot of this funding to destroy all these things are coming out of the Rockefeller Foundation. Okay. Then, of course, you got the Ministry of Truth. And what is the Ministry of Truth? It's our disgraceful media. Okay. And, what's the sort? I mean, the New York Times is this so-called all the news that fits the print of a great lady, whatever it's called. But evolution, the environmental movement, okay, Paul Krugman, as I've mentioned, that Fabian socialist maniac that go into debt to get out of debt douchebag, all right? Okay, that's your Ministry of Truth, okay? And who founded the New York Slimes, okay? Who had a hand in the Rockefeller empire, okay? Then you have, of course, J.P. Morgan, okay, who was the owner of General Electric, which founded NBC, okay? Your major media is owned, okay? Even your so-called, quote, conservative Fox News, you'll never hear about the Federal Reserve or even the abortion movement or anything like that, or the Nazi, the American Nazi eugenics love fest that went on in this nation. That's still going on through the environmental movement. You won't hear this on Fox News, all right? But that's your Ministry of Truth, is the controlled media and the controlled press in this country, all right? There's no. We're just seeing it. What we're seeing right now is just it's gotten so bad that anybody with an IQ of above 3 can see how bad the press is in this country. To see how pathetic it is. Okay, and the world's literally burning down around us. Food riots and South America and the Russians and the Chinese and the United States dollar being dumped everywhere because the world has figured out how stupid we are. Okay, with quantitative easing, which again is a fancy name for 5-year-old monopoly money handouts. Okay, the rest of the world has figured that out already. Okay, but you won't hear that on the Ministry of Truth. Okay, the CNN, MSNBC, Fox News conglomerate that passes off as news in this country. Okay, and again, and even if the Rockefeller empire doesn't have direct control of it, it has indirect control through things like the Bilderberg Group, which is currently meeting in Chantilly, Virginia, I believe, and they may have broken up already. Okay, and David Rockefeller, of course, was a stalwart and a focal point of that, but, he just beat his other fellow Bilderbergs to his abode in the bottomless pit. Okay, he just got there a little bit ahead of time. But anyway, so the Ministry of Truth is alive and well. Okay, again, through Rockefeller directly, Rockefeller Foundation or Empire directly, or through the Rockefeller founded and controlled or formerly controlled Bilderberg Group, which is still a go. Centralized economic control. Okay, that's easy. Okay, that's the Federal Reserve System. And by the way, to top it all off, all these tax exempt foundations. Okay, a lot of that comes from the Federal Reserve System. So in other words, not only did this son of a bitch, these Rockefellers and Morgans, not only did they literally steal us and rob us blind as once great nation with the Federal Reserve System, as we are indebted to their private banking conglomerate with interest, that money that created out of nothing, okay, they sucked the life out of us, literally. Well, literally, and if you want to talk about the abortion movement, which we'll talk about, in World War II and Vietnam, they literally sucked the life out of us. But in a figurative sense, not only did they steal it, but they exempted themselves from their own system. That's why they're called tax-exempt foundations. Okay, so whatever profits, a lot of the profits that they made were exempt from the Internal Revenue Service that they created to keep the rest of us pilgrims in line. Okay, now Henry Ford, I'm paraphrasing, it's pretty close. He said, if the American people ever figured out how the economic system in this country really works, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. All right? So if people ever figure this out, just stop listening to the New York Times and the idiots on Fox News and Harvard and these other places, Cal Berkeley, and just sat down and forgot all that and just really looked and studied and figured out how the system really works, there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning, okay? But it's not going to happen. You can't convince most people. They go to the store and buy food and, or have their choice of supermarkets and they think they're free, okay? That's not quite the case. But that's just another little tidbit that they created this monetary heist known as the Federal Reserve System. Then they exempted themselves from it. Then they took that money and founded things like the pedophile Alfred Kinsey and Adolf Hitler, and made more money trading with China and Russia during the Vietnam War when we were supposed to be fighting communism. Okay, so now hopefully the picture's starting to develop as to my disdain for the Rockefeller Empire and my, I don't want to say euphoria, I'm not really happy about it, but satisfaction that he'll have his eternity with his Dark Lord Kronos or Apollo or Apollyon and Satan. Okay. Central political control, that's another easy one. Okay, that's just the so-called two-party sham. Okay, the Republican versus Democrat, which the current president Donald Trump is broken up a little bit, but Donald Trump ultimately he's going to sink. He's like the mire. Okay, as admirable as he's trying to do, and he is holding off the deep state or the un-American genocidal complex for the time being, it will swallow him up eventually. I'm just talking prophetically, biblically. Okay, he's not going to be able to stop the tidal wave that's coming. Economic, war, chaos, the gods of chaos. Okay, as we've discussed on past shows. But this window he is holding open for a time. Okay. But be that as it may, the central political control, let's just take Donald Trump out of the picture. What would we have had? Okay, we would have had Queen Jezebel, Hillary, the abortion queen, the Margaret Sanger Award winner. Okay. Versus the putz, okay, heir to the douchebag throne known as the Bush family, Jeb Bush. That probably would have been the presidential election. Okay, a Mitt Romney-like loser, an amoeba, Jeb Bush versus Queen Hillary. Okay, and those two dolts aren't the same political party. That's central political control. And again, where's it all coming from? Okay, the Rockefeller Empire. If you look, I mean, the two sidekicks, Brzezinski, another one who just passed away and will be joining his boss in the bottomless pits of Igno Brzezinski, and Kissinger, who's not far behind. And how many elections did we see those two running around? You know, one with the quote conservative Republican, the other one with the liberal Democrat. I mean, I can't think of a better example. But David Rockefeller back there in the shadows. Okay, and of course when they blew JFK's head off in broad daylight, I mean, the so-called Warren Commission, it was all Rockefeller frontmen. All right, and of course the Rockefeller-controlled press, you know, put it out there that, you know, yeah, it was, what's his name, Lee Harvey Oswald with a single-shot rifle from the book Depository, okay, you know, shooting out rounds that, you know, that stopped and turned in midair, and all that other fancy stuff there, you know, that people bought into, okay. But anyway, but that's central political control, right? I mean, basically, if you blow the president's head off in broad daylight, lie about it in front of 200 million people or in front of the world, literally, get away with it, and you pretty much control the political message and the political parties in the country, okay. Not to mention that real power. I mean, what is really political power? Really, power flows through the purse strings. And when you control the economy through the Federal Reserve System, well, who gives a rat's ass who writes the laws, or who makes the laws, and what clown in his clown car is there on TV, you know, telling you he's going to change things and he's for the little guy, you know. Anyway, three world superstates. Okay, we see this in things like the Trilateral Commission. And in my scenario, in Mystery Babylon, it's not quite going to make it, okay, because Russia and China are going to figure out that, you know what, they don't need the Rockefeller, this one world empire, and they want out, okay, and that's really the genesis, no pun intended, of World War III, the climactic World War III and this ambush of the United States, okay. Okay, when the Russians and the Chinese really figure out that Donald Trump doesn't really have full control, and they're dealing with a bunch of genocidal psychopaths, is when they're going to pounce. And Putin's already thinking about this. Don't think he's not. Okay, he's looking at these morons in Congress. Okay, accusing him of meddling in the United States election with no proof whatsoever. Okay. He's looking at the psychopaths. He's looking at the endless wars. He's looking at these ridiculous wars around his country. Okay, the Ukraine, Georgia a few years back. Okay, the Middle East is a mess. Okay, you have Muslims pouring in all over Europe. All right, their access to the Mediterranean and the Black Sea is being threatened. Okay, Syria, their ally in the Middle East, is being threatened. You know, and I'm not saying Russia's 100% perfect, but who the hell are we? You know, Fox News idiots, you know. This Russia, I mean, who the hell are we? We start wars all around their border and act as if we wouldn't do anything if Russia was over here starting wars in Mexico and Cuba and Canada. Like, we would sit here and do nothing, okay? Fox News idiots. But anyway, going off on a little bit of a tangent, the point is, the Trilateral Commission that tried to meld the world into one, it's not going to work out, okay? Yeah, the Rockefeller Empire with the Russian Revolution, with Lenin, that's all a scam too, Karl Marx, okay? You know, again, infiltrated into the United States through the General Education Board and the communists over at the Columbia Teachers College and all these, Harvard and these sorts of places, okay? It's not going to work out, okay? It's just going to be chaos and mayhem, okay, as the Russians and the Chinese are trying to break out from their attempt at the three world superstates. And of course, in Orwell's 1984, I think it was, can't remember the names off the top of my head. I think it was Eurasia, Oceania, and I can't remember the third one. But it's obviously a play on the Rockefeller United Nations desire to have the world melded into a one world government superstate. Okay. China's running circles around us. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're, sucking up all the gold in the world and dumping United States treasuries and buying up real estate throughout the United States while we sit here with our thumbs up our nose and other parts of our bodies and watch these idiots in Congress pursue Russian spying that doesn't exist. Okay, getting back to the two-party sham. All right, because the Republicans aren't stopping that either. But anyway, I don't go off on that tangent. But that was the Trilateral Commission, United Nations, was the attempt at three world, or which really was a one world super state, but it's not happening. All right. Selective elimination of undesirables, in other words, flushing them down the so-called memory hole in Orwell's 1984. Now, where do we see that? We see that in the eugenics movement, the American eugenics movement brought to us by the forerunners, the predecessors of today's American liberals. Okay, and it's documented in here, the un-American genocidal complex. Okay, so these idiot liberals and their, these white stupid kiddie liberals in these stupid Ivy League colleges, they think they're so, so great, and the black people that follow them, there's nothing else to say. Okay, they were selectively being sterilized, and they still are through Margaret Sanger's Negro Project, which we know today as Planned Parenthood. Okay, not to mention the endless wars. Okay, not to mention the deployment of the AIDS virus. Okay, and all these other things in the upcoming, World War III. Okay, the insanity known as World War III. Okay, black people, you've been selected in the United States and in Africa with the AIDS virus and the abortion here. You've been selected for elimination, okay, by the Rockefeller Empire. All right. Now today, of course, they can't just come out like little deviants they are. They can't just come out and, like they did in the 1900s and the early 20th century and, put black people in zoos and say, yeah, we got to throw these people in institutions and sterilize them because they're imbeciles, morons, and misfits, And then Margaret Sanger comes along and says, why even bother paying money on those? Let's just kill them in the womb before they're even born. They can't quite get away with that anymore. Well, they still can. Planned Parenthood, they just, Rockefeller Foundation funded American Eugenics Movement / Planned Parenthood. They can still get away with that. They just call it women's rights. Okay, so that that's a big check. That's a go. The black genocide known as abortion, but the outright eugenics population control movement through the wars and this sort of thing, World War I, World War II, communism, the control through communism to Wall Street. It's documented in Anthony Sutton's Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay. Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler is another one of his books. But anyway, they can't quite be that blatant. So what do? Is they hide behind the environmental movement. They come up with this scam called the population problem. Okay, and peak oil. And we'll get into oil in a second here. And they hide under this camouflage of carbon pollution, but it's full speed ahead on the genocide. Okay, because what are we really talking about here? We're talking about limiting the population to save the earth. I mean that's the mantra of the modern environmental movement, and these stupid asses that are out there stumping for global warming or carbon pollution. Okay, just like the black liberals with the abortion, they're stumping for their own deaths. And I mean that literally, okay? And I find it hard to believe that the groups like the Bilderberg group at their little hotels down there in Chantilly, Virginia, wherever the hell they're meeting over in Europe, literally laughing at us. And laughing at these stupid little liberals, these little white college kids, okay? Stumping for all this crap. Because if you trace through the environmental movement, okay, which again, per the Georgia Guidestones, it's etched in stone, limit the world's population to 500 million people, leave room for nature, this sort of thing, it's etched in stone, okay, but if you trace the money, you follow the money, it goes right to this place, United Nations, Rockefeller founded the United Nations, Rockefeller Foundation, all the big oil groups, okay, I mean, just think about it, carbon pollution. Your body is carbon and water, okay? Carbon is nature, okay? So there's a whole branch of chemistry called organic chemistry. It's based on carbon, Okay, even the term organic, if something's organic, means it's characteristic of something. Okay, it's a term. Okay, it's ubiquitous. Carbon is ubiquitous in nature. So when these idiots go out there and talk about limiting carbon pollution, you're stumping for your own deaths. You're stumping for your own genocide. People are so stupid. They don't even realize this. And of course, that all goes harkens back to the lack of education in the education system and things like biology and photosynthesis and what carbon dioxide really is, and this sort of thing doesn't get taught in school. So it's easy to trick people because they don't know anything, because the Rockefeller control the education system. So you can see this whole plan. This is a premeditated plan. None of what's happening right now is an accident. Okay, it was all planned. And the nexus, I'm not saying 100% of it, but I'm saying the nexus, and a large, overwhelming majority, can be attributed to the Rockefeller empire. Okay, and of course, you know, the 2 minutes of hate. Okay, and you could see that all over. Like, you could just see the hatred being generated. Okay, because as the Federal Reserve System begins to collapse, and it will collapse, and it is collapsing. Okay, the idiots, the imbeciles, especially the stupid liberals, okay, who were funded by, ironically, a bunch of rich white guys that they profess to hate, you know, Rockefeller, Soros, and the rest of them. They're going to start pointing fingers, okay? The welfare recipients who can't get their free government cheese, okay? The people that are dependent on the government and the Federal Reserve System and this endless money printing. When that gravy train ends, and it's going to end, as it mathematically must, the hatred between people, okay, that's being engendered right now, is going to explode, okay? You can already see it. The Trump is a lightning rod to elicit a lot of this hatred, okay? But these people really don't hate Trump. People that hold Trump's head on TV, the bloodied head of Trump, yeah, they hate Trump, but they don't really hate Trump. They hate America, okay? They literally want half the country dead. That's literally, let's just cut the crap and let's just get right to it. They literally want half the country dead, okay? And, you know, again, where's that? It's all being engendered through this so-called media, the controlled media, which we discussed, the controlled education system, which we discussed, and the control to the economy, okay? As the Wall Street, you know, gets their, and these rich banks get their bailouts and all this sort of thing. You have this class warfare. And, of course, you took God out of the equation. So, you know, the whole Ten Commandments, you know, thanks to the communist-founded pedophile murdering, defending scumbags at the American Civil Liberties Union. Okay, God's out of the equation, so the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not covet, and all this sort of thing. Okay, that's all out the window. So now covetousness and all this is just there. Okay, it's just humans with nothing, you know, fallen humans trying to figure things out on their own, and it just doesn't. It's just chaos, and that's what we're on the verge of now. Now I go through and I document at the bottom of this, and there's links there, and it's fully footnoted, as is everything on my website, by the way. But again, that's the 1984 link on the New Age page of my website, boxofsunglasses.com. But, you know, one thing I failed to put in here, and I don't know really where it would fit, but is the Rockefeller. You know, of course, when you think of Rockefeller, you think of Standard Oil, you think of oil. Okay, although their fingers are in everything. Of course, banking, of course, the Federal Reserve System, pharmaceuticals, so-called medical research, education system, as a media, as we've discussed. But yeah, look what they did with Saudi Arabia. Okay, they wrested control of Saudi Arabia from the British. Okay, around let's say around the 1930s. And they started pumping oil in Saudi Arabia. Made a deal with the Saudis and gave them whatever 12% of the royalties or whatever. And I'm speaking in general. It's not the details aren't that important. But the point is, they established Saudi Arabia as the center of their oil empire, and they basically, and they took all their resources, the academic, the steel, the industry, the industrial resources, took it for themselves and sent it over to Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia had the oil infrastructure. Not that we don't have any oil infrastructure here in this nation, obviously, but we don't have enough to feed us, so we've become dependent on Saudi Arabian / Rockefeller oil. And that's all a setup. Okay? Now think about it. Think about how many wars we've gone, or how much we have to defend, and we have to. you have to defend our oil and all these wars for oil, but none of it's necessary because we have all the oil we need. Not to mention other energy sources. Okay, Tesla, and you get into that whole thing with the free energy, and his dealings with J.P. Morgan and General Electric. Okay, wind, water, but none of that was ever allowed to flourish. Okay, those patents were bought out. People were literally assassinated, killed for anything that would stand in the way of big oil. Okay. And in Rockefeller, in the United States case, Saudi Arabian big oil. And if you think about it, it doesn't make sense on some kind of level that Rockefeller, why would the Rockefeller Empire be behind, a scam like global warming or climate change? It makes perfect sense when you take into account the general douchebagness, we'll call it, of the American Harvard liberal progressive who buys into this climate change crap. Okay. Because what are you doing? You're limiting your competition here in the United States. Okay, you're slamming the coal industry. Okay. Meanwhile, like during World War II, you're supplying the Nazis with coal and oil and synthetic oil and those other stuff. Because you're the Rockefellers. You can help the Nazis. IG Farben fund the Nazis all before, during, and after World War II. Okay. Rotten hell, David Rockefeller. All right, but be that as it may, but then you go and you screw over the United States, and you send all the resources and every infrastructure over to Saudi Arabia that you own the majority of. Of course, they give the Saudis a pittance, 10 or 12% of whatever they're paying the royalties. I don't know how it works today, but this is going back to the founding, and who the hell knows today? But the point is that they screwed us once again. Okay, so now we're dependent on a country halfway on the other side of the world. Some shady Arab sheiks in Saudi Arabia, the so-called royal family. All that wealth. Not only did they steal the wealth of the Federal Reserve System, what was left of the industry, they stole through the Saudi Arabian oil scam. Okay. We don't need Saudi Arabian oil. We have what we need right here. It would be a lot cleaner, but again, you fund the environmental movement and you further destroy the oil industry in the United States. I mean, do you really give a crap about the environment if you're David Rockefeller? No, you stupid ass liberals. Okay, because what is he doing? They don't have global cooling. They don't have climate change in Saudi Arabia, you assholes. That's the point. You bash it down here in the United States and maybe Europe because they see how smart they are. The progressives and liberals in Europe and what's going on over there now. But not to go off on that, but you basically you squash the competition here in the United States through through regulation, over-regulation, environmental laws, global warming and all this other stuff. And if you think about it, in general, and I'm not saying I'm getting every detail right here, but the principle is right. You squash your competition here in the United States. John Rockefeller, Davy's dad, who, I'm sure has a room next to him down there in Hades. Competition is sin. This is why he was a big social Darwinist and a eugenicist. Okay, just kill off your competition. It's, it works in nature. Why can't it work in industry? And that's basically what social Darwinism, and that's basically what Hitler was doing. Okay, just taking philosophy you learned right here in the United States and applying it in real time. With the funding of the Rockefeller Empire, by the way. But anyway, so again, you squash your competition here in the United States, and what are you doing? You spend a few bucks on some Harvard asswipes in the New York Times. They spread this global warming scam. You suppress the oil industry in the United States, and then you're full speed ahead in Saudi Arabia. For the same amount of money, your supply goes down and your profits go through the roof. Now I know there's fluctuations. Oil is tied to the economy and demand for oil, but then we're dependent on what the Saudis want to pump and what the Saudis want to do. What the hell is that? We're dependent on a bunch of shady Arab sheiks for the lifeblood of our economy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's a scam. But people just buy it. I mean, literally and figuratively, because, again, going back, they own the media and academia and the banks, okay? And they worship Moloch at Bohemian Grove. Okay, so let's just sum up. Not only did they give us this Orwellian madness, this super state, the Rockefeller Empire has provided us with Darwin, eugenics, abortion, world wars, Korea, Vietnam, okay, and the upcoming World War III. Okay, but that's a story left for another day. But this is really what's behind all these things. Okay, it's just that simple. All right. I'm not saying the world is perfect and no war would happen without them, but they are the engine behind a lot of the wars. Okay, and trading with the enemy. Okay, can you think of anything more dastardly or evil than trading with the Chinese and the Russians during the Vietnam War? Okay, war, go over there and fight communism, stop communism, and sending all the poor white kids and poor black kids over there to fight a war that had no real purpose, no goal. We just made a lot of money for the war industry, the military-industrial complex, okay, and the Rockefeller Empire. That's at World War I and World War II, okay. But that's what it boils down to. And again, if you trace it back, the Rockefellers, really got a lot of their seed money from the Rothschilds, who were probably on the pyramid. You go a little bit above the Rockefellers, you go a little bit below, you get the Morgans, Vanderbilt, okay, these kinds of people. You go a little bit above, you get the Rothschilds. You go above the Rothschilds, you're at the top of the pyramid. Okay, you're into this guy. Okay, or you're into this guy, Robert Christian. Okay, so in Matthew chapter 4 and Luke chapter 4, when Satan tells Jesus, worship me and I'll give you the world. In other words, I own the world. Just bow down and worship me. And there's that interaction. Who is this devil character? Is it the Robert Christian? Okay. That was hanging out with the Rothschild family, as I document in chapter 3 of my first book. They live, okay. Robert Christian, who was there when the Rothschilds got their start, who in turn funded the Rockefellers. Okay, so now you can see the evil. Now you can see why I consider these comic book Christians, okay, these people, who want to say you want to focus, biblical events on Israel and the Middle East. I'm not minimizing that, by the way. I'm not saying that's not important, or I'm not trying to belittle that at all. But I'm just saying the quote conspiracy, okay, what the Bible's talking about is much, much bigger. Okay, not that, again, it's just to put it in perspective. Okay, I'm not saying it's a small situation or it's to be minimized or I'm mocking it in any way, what's going on in the wars in the Middle East. I'm just saying the quote conspiracy is much more pervasive. It's much more evil. It's much more real. It's much more in our face. Okay, it's in our face, and most people don't even see it. Okay, all brought to us courtesy of the Rockefeller Rothschild Empire. Okay, as we've just discussed, boxofsunglasses.com. Okay, God's Simple Salvation Plan. I'm saying we don't stop this at this point. Okay, which is the culmination basically of history. Okay, brought to us by Robert Christian and his one level down, we'll call it, on the Great Pyramid, here in the United States and the world. What we just focus on, the Rockefeller Empire, okay, behind every evil, every conceivable evil in the world, and I'm saying that. The Nexus, okay. Boxofsunglasses.com, Tuesdays, Thursdays, most Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and if I'm not here, again, the archives the YouTubes are all posted there with the descriptions. Good night and God bless.